Debbie Fawcett, and I am on the board as one of the membership directors with CCNI. And I have the privilege of introducing our speaker today. Tim Cosby is the president of Empowerment Coaching Network International, a coaching, training, and consulting company serving nonprofits and corporations since 2010. eCNI provides a range of services from a 2-day empowerment coaching training workshop to equipping certified professional empowerment coaches. Tim has served as a pastor since 1976 in several churches and served as chaplain at Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids, Michigan for 10 years. Tim is also co-author of Coaching-Based Ministry, Transforming Ministry Through Empowerment Coaching. He also coaches leaders in transition through his private coaching practice, Terra Nova. Tim and his wife, Diane, of 42 years, reside in Grand Rapids with their 4 children and 8 grandchildren. And looking forward to your presentation today, Tim. I love your title, Holding Focus, Attention, and Being There at Ease. How to coach in the moment and stay focused on the goal. So Tim, I will go ahead and give that to you. Let me just remind everybody before we do that, I am going to give a passcode in the middle and at the end. You need both of these passcodes to complete the survey at the end of this session to get credit for this particular session. Okay, Tim, there you go.
Great. Thanks, Debbie. I really appreciate that. And welcome to all of you around the world. I'm going to be turning my video off here in just a second. I just wanted you to know that I'm real and not a robot. And I'm turning it off because it's possible that one of my grandchildren might run in this back door right behind me. And I don't want that to be distracting for you. So I'm going to turn off the video here and then go to share my screen here with you. And we will get started. So my goal here today is to share a conceptual model to help you hold your client's focus, but be there with them when that is needed. And there's a tension between these two, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And really my goal is that you'd be able to share and explain this model when I'm done today. And hopefully this will be a help to you. It's a conceptual model. I'm a visual learner, so I'm hoping that it'll be helpful for you. So first of all, let's just talk about the tension that happens between these two skills. I just want to tell you a story. So I was coaching this executive leader, and we had been together for several months and meeting every other week. We were working towards a goal, pretty specific goal that she had chosen. And one day she came in, and she had actually been on the freeway that morning and was behind a semi-truck that was in an accident, and the driver died in that accident. She was like right behind. And it was a very, very traumatic event for her. But a couple weeks before that, her mom had passed away. And so when she came to the session, this had just happened like the day before. And she was telling me about it. And what it had done is it kind of raised some issues in her life just about grieving. And she realized that she hadn't really given herself time to grieve her mother's death. So here's the tension. So like, what do? We have a goal that we've been working on, but I need to be there with the client in this moment. And so that's the tension that we're going to talk about. Now I'm going to tell you the end of that story at the end of the session. So the question is, how do we coach in this tension? Which one of those is more important? Tell you another story. So I started with a client. He said, could you help me? I'd like to finish my book, and I would like to create a series of teachings on 6 CDs. That was back when we used CDs. And he said, could you help me do that? So I said, well, yeah, sure. So we started, and we're about 3 or 4 weeks into the process. And I noticed that in every session, he just kept talking about his wife. His wife just kind of came up in every session, and he was spending a lot of time talking about his relationship with his wife. And so I started feeling this tension, like, okay, so he came to me, he's actually paying me to help him complete this goal, very objective, measurable goal. But it seems like in our sessions, he just spends most of his time talking about his family and his wife and those kind of relationships. So the question for me was, all right, so what do I do? I'm feeling a tension. So that's just to set the stage, and I'll tell you the end of that story later too. In terms of coaching competencies, this is skill number 4 and skill number 11, although it relates to other skills, I'm sure. Coaching presence, managing progress, and accountability. And I'm not going to walk you through all of those core competencies or markers. We are going to look at some towards the end of the presentation today, and there'll be an opportunity for you to kind of do some self-evaluation. But those are the coaching competencies that we're really looking at. So here's the conceptual model that we use in our coaching training. And let me just kind of open this up to you, just kind of explain it to you, and then we're going to go through each piece. So notice first that holding focus along your client's critical path is central. In our coaching training, we use the term critical path to mean all of the steps that the client designs and needs to complete on a weekly or bi-weekly basis in order to reach their goal. So they design their critical path, and if you can help them stay on that critical path, they'll actually reach their goal. So, but once they have clearly defined the goal, that's really when the fun begins. So in your experience, what is usually the first thing that happens after a client has defined their goal and set their initial action? And you can write in the chat some things that kind of come to your mind here. I've got some things in mind, but I'd really like to hear kind of what you're saying here. What are some things that usually happen in the journey with a coaching client as soon as they have defined their goal? Okay. Right. Yeah. All the things that are going to prevent them from attaining their goal. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. So the first thing that happened is that they hit these obstacles and distractions. And as someone said here, sometimes it's just a kind of a wall of silence, and you're not really sure what's going on. So when they hit these obstacles and distractions, you know, what are you supposed to do? You want to help them reach their goal, but you'll also feel the need to just be there with them. Whether they're up or down, emotionally up or emotionally down, to be with them. So people can be pulled off their path by emotional highs or emotional lows, and you guys know that. Our job is to be there with them in the highs and the lows, and then let them decide the pace of the journey and the destination, or even the pace of that particular conversation. So we'll need to coach up or coach down, depending on where they are on the emotional spectrum, but we can't just leave them there. So at some point, we have to coach them back to their desired goal, or sometimes a new goal that they choose. So that's the conceptual model we'll be working with. And what I'd like to do is just kind of talk about each aspect, and we'll take your questions along the way. First of all, let's talk about holding focus. Talk to me about what you believe is important about getting a clear coaching focus in the very beginning of a coaching session. This might seem kind of obvious. Go ahead and write that in your chat there. Why is getting a clear coaching focus important, especially in this context of this tension between holding focus and being there? And I see this question that I have up on the screen. As you begin the coaching session, what specific steps do you typically take to determine the focus of that session? And let's say that you've taken those steps and they have that focus. Why is that so important? That's really my question. Right? So they know the way forward. Hard to hit a target if you don't know what it is. Right? It gives direction. Absolutely. So the point is that the clearer the focus at the start, the easier it will be to coach them to reach their goal. And the clearer it's going to be to both of you when they get off track and when you might just need to be there with them. So in boot camp terms, we have a mission, but stuff happens along the way to completing our mission. There are detours, there are landmines, there are blockades. So in our coaching process, we teach two major questions that have to be answered before you really get to any sort of goal setting or action steps. And that's basically, what would you like to talk about? That's kind of the general focus. But what specifically would you like to accomplish? In other words, what would be a win for you today? So you can't hold a focus unless you set a clear focus. That's the point of that point right there. Let's go on. What specific questions do you typically ask during the session to keep the coaching conversation focused? So let me hear that in your chat. What kind of questions would you ask to keep the conversation focused? You may sense that, this doesn't sound like what they first started talking about. So how might you ask that question? Go ahead and write in the chat there. Okay. Good. So how does what you said relate to the goal? Right. What do you mean by whatever? Good. How does this relate to the topic? Great. You're talking quite a bit about this. Would you like to shift towards a target? Another target? Yeah. Good. So those are the kinds of questions, and we're going to learn here together. It's not like I've got all the answers for all this, but those are some of the kinds of questions that you can use to keep a client focused. But let's go to some other challenges. What specific challenges have your clients encountered that made holding focus difficult for them? Just give me some examples of the kinds of things that some of your clients have experienced. I like that comment, Amanda. That's good. Right, troubles at home, change of leadership, kids in the house, getting sidetracked, leaving for a big trip, personal crisis, unresolved emotions. This is great. ADHD, they had difficulty focusing. Yeah. Yeah. Just all kinds of stuff that can come up in the life of your client that really makes it difficult to hold focus. So this is going to happen, and this already has happened to all of you in a coaching session. So you've experienced all of this. So the question is, so what did you do about it when that thing kind of came up and you had this intuitive sense of, this sounds different than what they first said? What did you do? Or what did you say? Okay. Good. All right. I like that. This sounds important to you. Yeah. Okay. Let me ask another question. It's not on the screen, but what are some of the challenges for you as a coach to help a client hold focus during a session? If that makes sense. So we're talking about you as the coach. What makes it difficult for you to kind of hold focus? Good. Too focused on the agenda. I like that, Amanda. Yeah, your own challenges. That's good, Kelly. When they say something that's easy to respond to, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you guys have felt that before going into a coaching session and you just had a long day. It's your sixth coaching session of the day or whatever, and you're just really spent and you're not sure where the mortgage payment is going to come this week or whatever. And really a challenge to then go into that session and stay focused. So there's challenges for the client and there's challenges for the coach. But you've given me some good suggestions about what to do. What other coaching tips in the area of holding focus would you like to share? Some things that you've learned now that have helped you help your clients kind of stay on track. Just go ahead and put that in the chat. Okay. Just bring them back to their vision. I like that, Amanda. Just ask outright how they would like to manage the session today. Praying for myself and the clients, good. I use a piece of paper to demonstrate where we are. Yeah, I like that. It's like we're way off of the edge of the paper here. That's good, Christine. Asking what they want to do if we get off track in our session. I like that. Ask what would have the biggest impact if we addressed it. Give space for them to think and be where they are. Great question, Michelle. You brought up a couple topics here. Which one would you like to focus on? Okay, good. One of the things that, and you guys know this, but in the very beginning of a coaching relationship, I bring this issue up. That way it's already on the table and we determine some sort of a signal together. So, hey, we're going to be in a coaching session sometime and you will have established a goal and I may sense that you're going off track. How would you like for me to alert you to that so that you become aware of that? And we just kind of figure that out. Maybe it's a hand signal, maybe it's a timeout, maybe you just say something. But the more you talk about those things in the beginning of a relationship, a coaching relationship, then the easier it is to kind of bring them out. And some of you probably have clients that just talk and talk and talk and talk. And it's like they're wearing the shirt that says, I'm talking and I can't shut up. And so those are the kinds of things that you can bring up in the very beginning of a coaching relationship in the agreement and say, okay, so if this happens, how would you like for me to deal with this? All right, Debbie, let's take a break here and let's give the first passcode. How about that?
Okay. Before I give the passcode, Amanda's asking if you have any ideas on if this happens at the end of the session.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I really know the answer to that, Amanda. I haven't experienced that. My, I guess I would kind of turn that back to you. It sounds like this has happened to you. So teach us here. What have you done when this kind of thing happens at the end of a session? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would just bring it up. So, we were talking about this the whole session. All of a sudden, it felt like that all the energy turned in this direction. What would you like to do? So again, I think I'd probably put the ball right back in their court. Okay, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay. If everybody's ready, I'm going to give you the first passcode for this session. The first passcode is First Peter, 1 space Peter. First Peter. Okay,
All right, great,
back
thank
to
you.
you.
All right, so that's holding focus. Let's talk about being there, which is the other pole of this battery. What are some indicators that you've encountered from your client that would lead you to be there with them? Just give me a short sentence of, this is what happened in their life, or this is how I knew that I probably need to be with them. Just give me some ideas of that. Let's say that I'm a new coach and I don't really understand this. What are some things that I could look for? Tears. Yeah. If I don't catch that one, I'm a really bad coach, right? What else? Hmm. Yeah. Good. Good. Hmm. What's said and what isn't said? Okay. All right. Good. Well, you guys are just great active listeners because you're listening to these levels of energy, the verbal emotions, kind of what they're saying, what they're not saying, events, turning points, their body language. This is just all part of good active listening. So, what do you do or say in that moment, in those kinds of moments? Just give me an example of what that might sound like. And you may have already said this in the chat earlier when we were talking about holding focus, but what do you say when those moments come up? How do you deal with that as a coach? Hmm, good, thank you. Yeah, I like that. I'm sensing you're struggling. Are you struggling? What is that about? What's going on inside of you right now? Great. So what I like about these responses, you guys are great coaches, is that they're focusing on the person, not the issue or not the problem. So, because that's what coaching is about, right? We're really trying to help this person grow and develop, and it's all about helping them to become more aware of what's happening in these kinds of moments. Okay, good. So that brings us, yeah, let's pause here. Tell me more. You seem to be frustrated, upset. Can you tell me more about what you're feeling? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Melody, for all those responses. So we've talked about coaching up, and we've talked about kind of coaching down, being there with them, whether it's an emotional high or an emotional low. So let's talk about coaching back. So whether you're coaching up or coaching down, there comes a point where you need to initiate the effort to start coaching back. So how might you do that? Now that you've listened to them, you've sensed what's going on, how might you start coaching back? Go ahead and put some of your thoughts in the chat box there. Yeah, what I mean by coaching back, that means coaching them back to the main focus. It's like we started here. This is what you said you wanted to talk about. So now you've listened to them. It kind of felt like they went off track, either high or low. Doesn't really matter. And now you sense it's time to start bringing back to the main focus. All right, good. How does this relate to your main focus? Oh, I like that, Kristen. I recalled you mentioned that if we get off track, you wanted to, yeah, nice. All right, let's circle back. What would you like to think or say or do about this underlying issue? What resolution might lead us back to the main focus today? It's good, Amanda, because you said that your desire was this. So how would you like to move forward? Okay, good. So I'm really kind of teaching a whole room full of professionals here today that undoubtedly know more about this than I do. So you're reminding them of the main goal when you started out. I tell clients that my job is to help them collect and connect the dots. That's been a helpful imagery for me. And so when I'm listening to a conversation, I'm writing things down that sound like the dots that they're collecting, and I ask them, so talk to me about the dots that you feel you've been collecting here today. And then I'm asking them, so you've collected a bunch of dots here today. What kind of connections do you see between any of these dots? And just keep it really, really open-ended so that they can answer in any way they wish. What relationships do you see here between these things that you've talked about? And then specifically, when you're in this kind of situation where they've started with a particular topic or focus, and now they've kind of gone off for a little while, this is a great time to just say, okay, so we started out with this big dot right here, and you've been talking about this. So what relationship do you see between this and what we've been talking about? So client came in one day and put his books down on the table that was kind of in between us, and said with a lot of emotion, he said, "Life sucks." And so I thought, okay, so there's no small talk today in this session. He's obviously something is really troubling him. And so I just listened, and I said, so would you like to talk about that? And he says, as a matter of fact, I would. And so we spent probably 5 or 10 minutes, and he was just kind of rehearsing what had happened and what he was so upset about. And I just listened. There was actually a lot of silence. And then when I kind of felt like he was kind of done spewing, because that he was pretty upset, I said, okay, I hear that. What would you like to do now? because we started out with this. This is what we've been working on. You had some action steps last week, and I'd like to hear about those. But what would you like to do? And he said, I'd like to go back to our coaching focus. I just needed to get that off my chest. And so I just thought, okay, so that was a really valuable thing for him because he didn't really have anybody else safe to talk to probably that day about that particular issue. And so that helped him to kind of get things out. I was with him there in the moment, listening. I care, showing empathy, using silence, all those kinds of things. And then there came a time where I sensed that we could coach back. So I just used those questions, and you guys have mentioned some of those questions here. And pretty soon we were kind of back on track. Now, I think that was a valuable use of his time. But you tell me in the chat box here, what kind of value do you believe that this provides to the client? What does this really do? I wish we could talk to each other here, but yes, this 10-minute would be charged to him. I would. That was just part of our session. Okay, it builds relationship and trust. They feel heard, understood. I like that. Getting this out of his system, he can now focus on really what he's came to focus. All right? It's reality. Sure is. I like that, Kelly. It helps them understand this is true coaching. I'm going to be with you. Nice. Helps them to clear the roadway. Yeah, and just asking them, yeah, isn't this clearing? This feels good. Okay. Safe place to vent, to share, right? Okay. So let's look at another kind of related question, but what indicators might you look and listen for that will tell you that they are now back and ready to continue on their critical path? And I'm reading your responses here, Sherry and Jill. Marve, it's good. When this happens, do you ask about it during the next session? I'm going to get back to that in just a second, Melody. So you feel like the energy is returning. There's some sort of a change in their demeanor. Yeah, energy seems to be the thing that we're noticing the most in this. The body language. Exactly. Longer answers. Interesting. Okay. Good. Thank you. Melody, I'm going to go back to your question. When this happens, do you ask about it during the next session? Can you just kind of elucidate on that a little bit to make sure I understand what you're asking there, Melody? Because it seems kind of obvious, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. Because I'm thinking when this happens, I'm talking about it in the moment. So do you ask about it in the next session? Okay, maybe I'm understanding better what you're asking. So maybe it was a big thing and maybe it was a big issue, and in the last session they talked about it, and they even related it to the goal that they're working on. Do you ask about it in the next session? That's a really good question. I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer to that. What do you guys think about Melody's good question there? Would it be good to bring this up in the next session? Okay. In our last session, you were upset about this. Has this resolved? Would you like to address it? Okay. Yeah, so I was understanding you, Melody. Mhm. If you bring it up, are you directing the topic? See, that's the tension that I feel in it, because I want to ask, so what would you like to talk about today, or what would you like to focus on today? And see if they bring it up. And then if they do kind of mention it, then you could say, so I heard you mentioned this. So last week when we talked about it, here's where you were. Where are you now with this? Then I think that would be okay. I'm not sure that I would initially bring it up at the beginning of the session. I think I'd probably wait for them to bring it up, and that way I would know how significant this really is, because maybe it's not significant at all. So I think your question there was good. If you bring it up, are you redirecting or directing the topic? You could be. And good point, Kelly. They're the expert, not me. So good. That's this tension, I think, that we feel when we're kind of moving into these kinds of moments. So the coaching back process often includes helping your client determine their next steps for dealing further with the situation they have shared with you. How might you do that? In other words, what would that sound like? Amanda, I'm looking at your response here. I think that's great. Yeah, good. She did it in a way that didn't feel like she was taking over, so that's good. Okay. Okay. So let's say that the situation that they bring up that felt like it took them off the path, they determine that there's something that they need to do with that. So again, how would that sound? Let's say I'm a brand new coach and I don't really know how to say these things. So how would you say that? Okay, good. I'll try to do that, Patty. Sometimes there's a related goal, like talking with pastor or getting EAP authorization. If it's still important to them, it may resurface. If not, bringing it up in the next session could distract from the focus. Yeah, Amanda, the question is, so they've determined that they're going to need some next steps. I mean, you've kind of heard them as they're talking about this issue. So how do you deal with that? How do you help them do that? Might seem obvious, but okay, good. Thank you, Debbie. I know that these might just seem obvious, but these are not obvious to some of the coaches that I've trained. So this is good. Where do you want to go from here? How would you like to move forward on this today? What is your next step? Good. I like this because you're keeping them very, very open-ended, and you're really keeping the ball 100% in their court. What support do you need with this? I like that, Amanda. One of the things I really like about that is that you didn't say, what support do you need from me? You just said, period. What kind of support are you going to need with this? This seems pretty important to you. Do we need to revisit your goals? Would you like to revisit your goals on a scale of 1 to 10? How important is this? Man, I love those scaling kind of questions. Those are really helpful for people, Kelly, when they hear that, because they haven't thought about this. And all of a sudden, if they say, this is a 10, then they're going, oh man, I guess this is important. I didn't even know that. So those are good, really, really good questions. We've talked about this, and this today. What would be helpful for you now? Good. God, this is so encouraging to see these kinds of answers, because these are just such great questions. They're open-ended, that let the other person respond in any way they wish. Really keeps the ball in their court. Who might you be able to partner with outside of our session? Good, good. Just a good expanding kind of question. Okay. All right, let's go back and let's kind of bring the Coach Client Holy Spirit kind of into focus here, because that's really what we're all really passionate about. So if your client is a Christian, and I coach a lot of clients that aren't Christians, so if your client is a Christian, what questions might you ask at this stage of the process so that you're intentionally bringing in some of the core kind of competencies and markers from CCNI that ICF doesn't have? What kind of questions might you ask at this stage of the process? I'm really interested in this, and I don't know a really good answer to this question, so help me here. Because I want them to understand the bigger picture, where's God involved in all this? So what kind of questions have you asked? Kind of bring God into the conversation. How does God fit? What is he sharing with you? How is God speaking to you about this? What do you hear the Holy Spirit saying to you about this? Okay, what examples from the Bible can you think of? Thanks, Jill. What spiritual resources might help? These are great questions. I hope you copy off this chat column here. This is good. Where do you see God in this? What would he say to you? Okay. Good. Okay. And again, how does your faith inform your thinking and decision making around this? Thank you, Gary. It's coming from a very, very seasoned coach there. That's really good. How does this align with your beliefs? Great. Big, big open-ended question. I love that. How does this sync up with your ideas about God? Yeah, nice. Okay. Yeah, these are all good. And again, I think that in the beginning of a coaching relationship, and I think you guys already know this, but you're going to talk about these kind of issues. So what place is your faith going to play? What place is your relationship with God going to play in this whole journey of coaching together? And how might be the best way for me to kind of increase your awareness of that? And so you've already talked about these things. So now you can refer back. So when we first talked, you said that this would be helpful for you. So then whatever you guys agreed on, whether it's, here's a scripture verse, what scripture have you thought of? What's the Holy Spirit saying to you? Or if you're kind of with Tony Stoltzfus, if Jesus was here right now, what would you like to say to him about this? And what's he saying to you? I love those kind of things because it's so helpful for the other person to understand the bigger picture. Hey, this is not just about me. God's involved in this. I think it's helpful to help the client distinguish between the Bible answer and what they are really thinking and feeling. Wow, that's a really interesting comment, Michelle. Can you give me an example of what you're talking about there? Because I think I know, but I don't want to just assume. We know what the Bible says about something, but we might be struggling with faith. Oh, okay. So it's just about being honest. Yeah. What are you really thinking? Exactly. That's great, Michelle, because that shows me that you're very, very sensitive to a very, very authentic kind of relationship with your clients. And if they really feel the freedom to really authentically tell you what they're really feeling, not just the Bible verse, then you built a great relationship with them. We're struggling with our sinful nature and the way it conflicts with Scripture. Okay. That's great, Amanda. You might establish early on that Sunday school answers might not help in coaching, right? It's like, I know that Jesus is the answer to this, but okay, good. Good. Thank you, Amanda. Good insights there from your own experience. And this kind of brings up a kind of a related area that's not specific, but I'm not going to mention it because I want to keep going here. Let's keep going. So you're coaching now to a new goal. Let's say, what if your client wants to focus on a new goal? Then what do? What does that sound like in a coaching conversation? Yeah, let's say that it could be maybe halfway through. Let's try halfway through the session. Because if something's really, really on their heart, it may come up at the beginning of the session. Okay. That's a good question. Will this be a new overarching goal or a goal for the session? That's a really good question. What if it is a new overarching goal? Okay. So would you like to change your focus for today? Okay. Good. We started with this. You're talking about this. Would you like to change your focus? That's a yes or no question, but it's actually a closing kind of question that you need. Yeah. How would you like to change your focus today? Thank you. That's great. So let me go back and tell you the end of the two stories that I started with. The first person had seen really tragic accident, and her mother had passed away recently. She just really had not entered fully into grieving. So I just asked her, so we've been working towards this goal. We've been meeting every other week. You've said this is really helpful for you. You've actually made some really great progress. What would you like to do? Just kept it really, really open. And she said, I appreciate that. She said, I think what I would like to do is this. I would like to hire a grief coach, and I would like to give you permission and them permission to talk with each other so that both of you can help me keep moving forward. So I want to keep coaching with you on the things that we've been talking about, but I feel like I also need some grief coaching. And I had told her I don't do grief coaching. I'm just going to do my regular coaching. So she said, great, that sounds like a plan. So we did. And so for a period of probably, wow, it was probably 3 or 4 months, she was seeing a grief coach, and every once in a while the grief coach and I would talk because permission had been given there for the confidentiality stuff. And it was very, very helpful. And she worked through some issues so that I didn't have to go into counseling mode. And that was really great. The other situation, we'd been coaching, and this person just kept talking about his spouse. And so I finally just said, okay, so when we started out, this is what you said you wanted to do. You've made some forward progress. So tell me what's going on here. And he said, well, actually, I'm just having some real difficulties at home. And I said, well, what would you like to do? And he says, I think I need to focus on that in our coaching. So we changed the entire focus. He basically took his goals of writing this book and the CD series, he set that aside, and we kind of changed the big focus. And but I felt like that's my job as a coach, to keep the ball in his court. He's paying me for this. So it's got to come from him. What would you like to do? And we kind of started all over again. So here's the model that we've been looking at. You're holding focus along your client's critical path. They set their goal, all of a sudden obstacles, distractions, stuff happens, and now sometimes you got to coach up or coach down and just be there with them. That could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be an hour, and it could be a whole new goal. But at some point in the conversation, you're trying to bring them back and put the ball back in their court. So we started with this, now what would you like to do? And if they say, hey, I just want to work on a completely new goal because I think that that's what's going to be most helpful, then that's what you do with them. So that's the model that we use that's been helpful for me. I hope that's helpful for you. What I'd like to do now is to go to the CCNI coaching markers and just have you do a very, very quick evaluation. This is kind of a personal evaluation, and you should have been able to download that when you logged on, or in your email there should have been a link to that. So I'm just going to read through the questions one at a time, and go ahead and put in the right hand column there if you always do this or never do this, and this is just for you. So number 1, I help my clients define what needs to be addressed in order to achieve their goals in the coaching conversation. 2, I connect with my client during the conversation to confirm the direction is supporting the client's forward progress and expression of faith, and together with the client, make adjustments as necessary based on their desires. 3, I explore what is important or meaningful related to matters of faith with the client, related to what she or he wants to accomplish in the session. 4, when appropriate, I partner with my client to help them connect the current focus to the long-term objective. 5, I partner with my client to move forward toward his or her desired outcome, referencing the client's relationship to God's plan as appropriate to the coaching conversation, unless the client indicates otherwise. We talked about all of these. 6, I'm fully engaged with the client throughout the conversation. 7, I am focused on the client's agenda, for the duration of the coaching session with no evidence of my agenda. And 8, I ask forward-moving questions for closing the gap between where the client is and what they want to achieve in the coaching conversation. So now, in the true spirit of coaching, based on what you've discovered today, write one action step to help you become a more effective coach. And as I said earlier, I'd love for you to be able to just explain this conceptual model that we looked at today. But really more than that, this needs to impact your own coaching. So what have you discovered? What have you learned? And what's an action step to help you become a more effective coach? And feel free to put that in the chat box. We're all friends here, and what happens at boot camp stays in boot camp. So this is all confidential kind of stuff.
And Tim, while
Yes.
people are responding, if they want to respond in the chat, I need to give the final passcode for today. So the final passcode, the second passcode for today's session is a number 1:13. 1:13.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to Sherry's question here. Did you do anything to get closure on the original goal or table it in case he wanted to return to it later? We kind of tabled it. I think that's probably that's good language. Because there would have been a possibility for him to come back to that later. We ended our coaching relationship several months after that. I actually ran into him at Panera's the other day, and we had a conversation, and actually what happened is his wife divorced him, and this is about 5 years ago, and now he's ready to start writing a new book because he realized he wasn't really ready to start writing the book that he wanted to really write, and now he is. So I might get to come back to that. So that's a really good question, Sherry. Okay, thank you for putting these action steps. Image of collecting and connecting, reflect on the competencies. I am holding on to your comment. Could you expand on that? I think I know what you're saying, but I don't want to assume as something I need to keep in my vocabulary. That's good. That's good. I will keep this visual aid of the path and up and back before me and become aware of this process. All right. Thank you, Kristen. Use 1 to 2 competencies and work to keep those in mind as I coach with a client. What would you like to do? I know, isn't that true, Kelly? It's just like, can it just get any more open than that? I just love that open-ended question. Well, I would have rather been face-to-face in the same room with you guys today. Man, I'd love to meet you guys. It's a lot of fun. Thank you for your interaction here. We're learning together, and you're making a difference. We're making a difference in the kingdom. So keep up the good work, and thank you for your participation today.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. This has been so helpful. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. The next session will begin at 12:30 Eastern Time.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be closing the meeting out. Appreciate all your interaction.
Okay.
God bless.
Thanks, brothers and sisters.
Great job.
Thanks.